Hey, good evening. Back once again for our Monday, getting into the day just before Valentine's Day. And rolling a little bit of old clips here. This is some stratocumulus moving in from the south several days ago with some tropical flow, and we're kind of back in that pattern right now. This is the temperature anomaly map, and you can see temperatures are above normal in a lot of the central U.S. One little patch of below normal temperatures in the New York City area. They've had some very strong gusty winds through that region. And you see this little area here in West Texas and New Mexico of below normal temperatures. So why is that cold there? Well, we've got a combination of upslope flow. A lot of the flow in the lower levels is moving in from the east. So that climbs up from about 1,000 to 3,000 to 4,000. And that means we get adiabatic cooling. Parcels cool as they lift. And the other reason is evaporative cooling of rain into the columns there. And there's that rain right there. So basically wet bulbing and adiabatic cooling. So quite a bit of rain across Texas, and they've had a bit of a drought out there over the past year or two also. So much needed rain. You can see it's fairly weak up to the north in Oklahoma, just showery type weather. As we go to the south, it becomes more convective, much more convective. And you see down here in the San Antonio area, we've got some cells that have that kind of triangular shape. We can take a look at GR level 2, and let's see, we didn't get this rolling, so I guess I'll get started on that. Give me a couple of minutes and we'll have some frames to look at from San Antonio there. And then we've got this other squall line out in the Pecos River area down to the Big Bend. One little cell there in Big Bend National Park looks pretty good there. Temperatures for today, they looked fairly warm. You can see down to the south, lots of 80s, and that's one reason the thunderstorms are a lot more severe in that area. So if I trace out 80, we're going to find the 80 line right there, 70 line like that, and then the 60 line like that. In fact, we can just keep going on to 40. So we've definitely got a warm front sitting to the south somewhere. Warm front or a stationary front, something like that. Probably right there in between Del Rio and Sanderson up through the Austin area. So with a front lying in that area, we do have to be on the alert for possible severe weather. So we'll check out the possibility on that as we go through the charts here. 500 millibar panel shows the cutoff flow in southeastern Arizona earlier today. That's probably drifted a little bit over the past 12 hours, probably going through Las Cruces. And you can see the wind flow right now across Texas. Well, this morning, it was fairly weak, only about 20 knots there at 500 millibars. So if that's still the case right now, we're not going to see much in the way of severe weather. The other factor, of course, is instability, so we'll check that out also. Here's the water vapor imagery. You can see that comma appearance to the system, dry slot moving into the Big Bend area right there. And we'll take a look at the infrared. We haven't really done much of that. This is measuring the temperature of the cloud tops. So the very coldest cellular tops, that probably suggests that we've probably got some showers and thunderstorms embedded in this stuff. A little bit more of that down in the Midland area. And we can't see the low cloud field very well. That's going to blend in very closely with the ground. We see a few patches here of maybe some altocumulus, but infrared is not a good tool for looking at low clouds, unfortunately. So we have to turn to surface analysis to look at that. Okay, let's do our thermal analysis real quick. There you go. Pretty good temperature gradient there in West Texas. Looking at the front through the Del Rio area. Then it weakens as we go into Louisiana. Then the other frontal boundaries, there's probably one out in Florida. And looks like a warm front. Well, what do we got here? We got northwesterly flow. Not much of any advection. There is some sort of boundary right through this area. So I'd probably just go something like that. And then that would go occluded up into Ontario like that and back behind it. We should find the jet kind of in a position kind of like that right there. Okay, let's go back to GR level 2 and see if we have anything to look at out there in the San Antonio area. So that's going to be right west of Hondo. Cells look mostly multicellular, and one indicator you can look at is reflectivity gradients. And those look to be pretty weak. In other words, we don't find the highest reflectivities. We don't find them down in the south part of the storm. That would be a severe weather indicator right there. They tend to sit there right in the center. So just with this first glance at the radar chart, I can see we don't have a whole lot to worry about right now. Then one of the other things we can look at is storm relative velocity. We can look for any high velocities that stand out on this product, and unfortunately we've got some range folding back here, so I'm not getting a good look at that right now. But I can see that the overall environmental winds are fairly weak. I'm only seeing about 15 knots here and there. The southern storm here looks like it's putting out a little bit of outflow in the tops of the clouds. 36 knots, 8,000 feet. I think that's what we're looking at. Let's see, 38 inbound. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if this is maybe a little bit of rotation in the environment. I don't know, we'll probably come back to that one and see if we can figure that one out. However, it does look like maybe some rain in the San Antonio area later today. So we should, or tonight. Let's look at the soundings real quick. We'll check out the Del Rio sounding. We know they're kind of on the backside of that line. And we see what looks like frontal inversion at Del Rio. And we can also see that those thunderstorms are probably, in fact, they're definitely elevated. So the parcels are being lifted from this layer about 850 up to 750. That's about 4,000 to 5,000 feet. No, actually like 5,000 to 7,000 feet right there. And then the lifted parcels are going to look like this right here. So still a little bit capped there at about 625. But we are able to squeak out a little bit of cape right there, probably about 500 to 1,000. So we do know we have a frontal inversion right there. Let's check out Corpus Christi. The upper part of the profile looks pretty much the same as Del Rio, but we're missing the frontal inversion in the lower levels. So storms down here, if they fired, would be more surface-based. And it looks like they're being capped by that same layer right there. So firing some thunderstorms, they would follow this line right here. Kind of a high skinny cape. So that's not too suggestive of severe weather. And, of course, convective inhibition right here. So Those things are kind of detrimental to severe weather right now. And we do have a little bit of shear here in the lower levels. The 0 through 1 kilometer layer is actually what's critical in through here, and we're just not seeing a whole lot of turning in that layer. The turning from south to west, that's spread through a very deep 5 kilometer layer, so not much curvature on the photographs right there. And just a quick look at Del Rio. Looks like they're being affected by some of the westerly frontal air at the surface, but if we do get kind of like an easterly component to the lower level winds just north of the warm front, that would probably give us a little bit of the critical turning that we need in the lowest 1 through 2 kilometers. So the lower level patterns are really critical with this type of situation here. So I'm going to load up the current data here and get a look at the South Texas situation. Loading in data from College DuPage. And we're processing the surface data, just about finished here, and then we'll plot that. So this is current surface data. So we'll focus on South Texas right there and kind of we'll get a look at the mesoscale analysis here. So we see the air mass down to the south dominated by this tropical air. 73 over 69 is pretty common. So where does that change as we go north? Looks like we have to go all the way up to East Texas to find a change in that air mass. So we're probably looking at a warm front like this right here. Then we pick up the cold front further back like that. And no dry line with this particular situation. The cold front has pretty much undercut that. So we can see that the storms out in this area are probably not affected by that frontal inversion. So that balloon launch that we saw, that sounding that had the frontal inversion, that right there, that's behind the cold front. So that's the air band, the cold front right there. So now we're starting to get kind of a picture of the environment that these storms are firing in. So the Corpus Christi sounding is actually a lot more representative of the air going into these storms. So we need to focus on that right there. So just one more look at Corpus Christi. Looks pretty well capped. And we can see that there's not much curvature, as I mentioned earlier, so probably a very minimal threat of severe weather tonight. Okay, so let's take a look at the dynamics real quick. Current chart is looking like this. There's the downstream ridge from about Lake Charles up to Oklahoma City. A couple of short waves working through the flow, maybe one like that, another like that. So these are helping to destabilize the air mass. And then the trend we're going to see overnight is the main trough pull out. Pretty good slug of energy coming into the Del Rio area tomorrow morning about 6 a.m. And then I'll move up into the East Texas area later during the day, and then up to Arkansas by evening. So I don't know if we have any severe weather potential in this area, but we'll have to kind of monitor that as we go through the charts. We'd be looking at southeastern Arkansas through northern Mississippi. A lot of support for severe weather, strong winds aloft. So really the instability and low-level turning is really what we would have to look at there. So anyway, that's going to clear on out, and then by Thursday and Friday, One trough coming through Texas here, and then things get active out in the Pacific once again. Pretty good trough coming into Southern California there. And that works across the Southern Rockies on Sunday and Monday. So there's Monday right there. Then we have another trough coming on shore on the West Coast starting the beginning of next week. So a very active pattern for the southern U.S. Everything in this area right here. A lot to look at. Okay, before I move on further, let me just take a quick look at chat, see what's going on here. Okay, I got Sue M. and Andrew. Got Brian Harp and Fun with Tech. Sarah Wood is here. Kevin McKinney saying looks like maybe some severe weather for Houston midday tomorrow. Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. We'll see how much moisture comes up. Yeah, in fact, with that destabilization, that should help remove some of this layer right here. So we might be looking at a bit of a modification kind of like that. Maybe this area here would destabilize a little bit too. So we'd be looking at a sounding more conducive to severe weather like that. So I'll probably go ahead and, after we go into the GFS models, I'll probably show you a little bit of forecast soundings, and we'll see what things look like tomorrow in that area. Lexi is here, and Brett Dean. Been windy there, first thunderstorm warning last night. Michael Burrell is here, Brett Dean in South Jersey. Alexander Williams, looks like a new name there. Clear and cooler in eastern Tennessee. 52 at Tri-Cities, I think that is, KTRI. Ron Chalfant is here, Brian Harp, hoping for rain to take the red on the drought monitors away from Fort Smith. Brett Dean asks if that's a tail end Charlie. Probably. I'll take one more look at the radar and see how far south it goes. Michael Burrell says they might have set a new record for heat, 70 degrees at his location, and they forecasted 61 for the high. All right, Jason Boggs, Sue M. says the speed must be slowed, all fuzzy. Yeah, I've probably got some of the GR level 2 eating up the bandwidth. Tree Nelson is here, and Ancient Astronaut reports 69 in Central Texas. Okay. So how far south does that line go? Looks like pretty much to Hondo. So these would be our tail end Charlie storms here. And hang on a second, I got a little bit of a lockup. I think one of my apps is fighting for a CPU. I'm going to click over and see what is eating up my CPU real quick. It's AWIPS. I might have to shut that down there. So yeah, let me do that real quick. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, we'll see how that looks right there. All right. We can still go over to GR level 2. Yeah, so basically these are the tail end Charlie storms here, and like I said, looks to be kind of non-severe right now. So the environment is probably going to change, and this is probably a good time to look at our convective models. So let me get started on that real quick. Okay, just bear with me if the stream slows down because I'm going to be loading some products. I'm going to pull up the high resolution rapid refresh. And then I'm going to drill that down to the Texas area. So this is a high resolution convective model. And we can see the initialization doesn't really show that line too well. And it's not showing much of this going on here. So this initialization is not really all that great. But we can look at the large scale trend to see what's going on. And basically we're seeing a increase in coverage and intensity in the Central Texas convection. So we should see those storms continue to expand and fill in. And then you can see that the stuff up to the north here looks more stratiform up in the Dallas area. This is the main area we're concerned about right here. And you can see in the pressure field, there's a little bit of a low indicated in this area, a little bit of troughing right through here. So this is where your backed winds really become a factor out in this area here, because your winds will be more out of the southeast. Can't draw the wind flags very well, but that's what will actually give you your curved photographs right there. So we have to kind of watch this area. Of course, 11Z, that's going to be morning, so that's the convective minimum, but there still could be a few cells out ahead of that. So let's see what the forecast soundings look like ahead of this line. And remember, we don't want to sample in the storms, we want to get out ahead of it. So I'm going to click on maybe right here, a little bit east of Victoria. So the forecast sounding looks fairly well uncapped. A little bit of a capping, but not as much as we saw on the soundings just now. We can see a lot of moisture right there. And another thing you can do when you look at these forecast soundings, you can change the current time, or the forecast hour, and look at trends. So let's go back to 0 hours and watch the sounding. And you can see that right now, much stronger cap. So this supports the idea that we are going to see this cap being removed overnight. So I'm going to forward that up to midnight. So a little bit of reduction, but it looks like it's midnight to 6 a.m. where that really gets erased. So now it's gone right there. And then the photographs. Well, first we want to do kind of a sanity check, look at the lowest 1 kilometer. So we go from southeast at 10 to about southwest at 35, and then we compare that to the actual photograph. Okay, yeah, that looks to be pretty much in the ballpark, and you can see that there is a bit of curving right there. And you see how critical that surface wind is right there. So they're going for a light southeast wind. If you had a south wind at 20, your photograph would look more like this. With it would be shorter with less curvature. So by having the winds a little bit more backed and a little bit lighter, that really stretches it and gives us that curvature. And if we had east winds, that would be even more extreme right there. So the wind field is very important out ahead of the line in these situations. So yeah, we're going to see probably this system condense into a line and then move through the San Antonio area overnight, and then get into Houston probably about midday right there. Okay, let's take a look elsewhere. I guess we're probably ready to head into the forecast, so let's do that. Let me get the GFS set up. Okay, so here we go. Starting out the charts, you can see that low down to the south, and this is a baroclinic low, because you can see the thickness lines are kind of concentrated right on this area. So then we extend that northward and kind of link that up with the surface data that we saw. And it looks like there's probably another low right in here. So there you go. That kind of matches. This is kind of a blend of the model and the surface data. And the most backed winds, we were talking about backed winds with a hodograph. That's pretty much right in this area. And then the winds down here are going to be more southerly. So the trend overnight, GFS also has a lot of growth of convection in central Texas, moves the main pressure trough out east of I-35. And then by the time we do the webcast tomorrow night, that system will be out in Louisiana. So that'll be our picture right there, and then any severe weather potential, southeast Arkansas into northern Mississippi right there would be the best. So for Wednesday's webcast, things will move out pretty quickly. Cold front moves southward through the southeast U.S. Then we start seeing that lead trough developing in Colorado. Then going into Friday, lee side trough continues to intensify. The air mass is not very baroclinic at all across the central U.S. Just looks like a big warm ridge right in this area here. Most of the baroclinicity is up to the north out in this area here. So probably a weak front up to the north like that. And then we get the specific system starting to move in Friday into Saturday. So lots of rain coming in for California over the weekend. There's our front. It's like a pretty good pattern there for Los Angeles, right there near the triple point. So that develops into a low right there at the triple point, and it's already occluding at this point somewhat. Then it starts crossing the Rockies over the weekend. So by the time we get into Monday, kind of a repeat of what we have today. Well, actually with less high pressure up to the north, but yeah, more rain and showers for Texas on Monday. And just kind of a weak southern system here. We have a separate northern system up here in Minnesota. You can see we've still got a baroclinic area out in Nevada, Utah, Arizona. And looks like our next system starts picking that up probably somewhere in here. See all those thickness lines right there? This is a lot of energy that just has to be pulled together by some upper level support. And looks like that finally comes together around the 24th or 25th. And there we go. This is the 26th, and then we start to get to the end of the run, and now we've got some cold air building southward. So not much of a change to the pattern, just kind of a lot of southern stream systems moving across the southern U.S. and a little bit quieter up to the north. And that's probably about all I got right there. So let me take a look at the chat, see what else we got going on. Yep, that's pretty much it. Okay. I will probably just head on out and get some dinner. Hopefully you all have a good evening. Let me get the closing music going. I don't have that cued here. Ah, there we go. Okay, hope you guys have a good evening. We'll see you all tomorrow at the same time. Thanks.